Right, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm here with, I'm Stefano, by the way, for those who don't know me, and I'm here with Ilke.
Hello.
This is our 7th event. I'm very excited to see a lot of faces, some of all the community members, but also some new people, and also speakers from Tallinn, but also from Riga, as we will talk in a little bit. But before we start, I would like to thank our sponsors, CodeMagic, who are not here now, but will be later. So if you have some questions or anything, you can ask directly to them. That's the best CI/CD pipeline, I say by heart, for Flutter, not because they are sponsors. And yeah, before we start, actually, I would like to do our tradition that we usually do. So in 10 seconds, stand up and please stand up, everybody, and face some neighbors, so somebody next to you, and in 10 seconds say who you are and why you are here, and then the next person does the same. So
hello.
Hi.
Hola.
Daria,
Can you speaking as well, right?
Yes, I'm speaking. That's why I'm here, but also to make friends in the community.
And I think you're a GT as well, right?
Yes, I'm
How
a
did
GT.
that go? How did you get there?
Well, that's a good
long
question.
story, right?
Yes, it is. But basically, I've been contributing to the community for a long time with articles, talks, and so on. And I was recommended by a friend eventually.
5 seconds.
So, yeah.
We can continue that.
Yeah, sure.
All right, time over. We will have time later. It's always like this, people want to talk, but we will have time later for networking. I don't want to take more time from the presentations because we have a very special speaker today with us. She's kind of a legend in the Flutter community, so I was very honored when she accepted the invite. So let's welcome on the stage Daria Orlova, Google developer expert and the co-founder at BBapps.
Yep, that would be me. I'm very happy to see you all here, and let's do a little exercise. How many of you are familiar with the Harry Potter universe? Okay, we have a couple of people. I promise you there won't be too many references, and we will be mostly talking about static code analysis, but yeah, I just had to use the opportunity. So yeah, today you will be my student of software witchcraft and wizardry, and I, Daria Orlova, will be your professor of defense against the dark bugs. And besides occasionally teaching magic at conferences and meetups, I'm also a Flutter developer, and currently I have co-founded my own little agency, and by little I mean it's just me and my husband, called BBapps, where we create apps that care for you and the planet. And you can learn more about my apps at bbapps.dev. And by caring about you and the planet, I mean like categories such as education, lifestyle, wellness, health, environment. So basically things that contribute to a better life for everyone. That's what we are trying to do. But before going solo, before going BBapps, I was a Flutter developer at consultancies, agencies, and I have built many apps for many clients in different domains. You name it, I have probably built it. But after some time of building apps, I was promoted to a tech lead. And as a tech lead, my tasks, the scope of my tasks and the focus of my tasks has changed to things like coding standards, delivery practices, and teaching all of that to the teams. And one of those things was introducing universal static code analysis approaches to the projects that we have been building in our agency. And that is the topic of today. Sorry, I'm still figuring out this clicker. It's counterintuitive. So in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, the students throughout their potions class were brewing a potion called Felix Felicis, also known as the Spell of Luck. And anyone who took a sip of that potion were destined to be successful in anything that they would try to accomplish. And inspired by this analogy, I decided that what we will be brewing is a robust and automatic static analysis system for our Flutter apps. And to keep it a little bit more fun, at the end, at the Q&A, I will raffle Felix Felices for the best question. So get your questions ready. And of course, since we're talking about coding practices, we need some code. So for this talk, I built a demo app called Magic Beast. And it's very simple. Basically, it's just a library of various magic beasts generated by ChatGPT. Of course, it's 2024. And if you know me, probably you don't, but now you will. And one thing that everyone who knows me knows is that I'm obsessed with cats. And there is absolutely no way that a cat would not make an appearance in my talk. So please welcome Shadow Fellis. And since we're talking about magical beasts, things, and so on, the cat is also obviously a little bit magical. And the goal of this application, of this demo, of what we will be doing, is to take the initial code and refactor it, but only based on the things that the static analysis tools tells us to do, and see how that improves our code and where it leads us to. So let's take a look at some code. Can you see the code? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. The back says yes, then that's perfect. So the whole app is basically a single widget. The topmost widget is Beast Page View, which is a stateful widget. And as we can see, there isn't really any state, so that might be redundant. Then we see that we have a page view where the children are hard-coded and not really scalable, right? If we want to have 100 a different beast, then we will have to hard-code them here. And also, the formatting is a little bit off. And also, if we zoom into Shadow Fellis view and take a look at its code, with some experience, even just looking at the code, we can see that we are missing trailing commas and the code is not really well formatted. We are using the less efficient media query. We're also missing const constructors, and the widget could be stateless because it doesn't actually have any state. And another thing is if we switch a view, and if you haven't noticed, we have actually switched the view, and the only thing that has changed is the title of the widget and the image provided. So those are literally duplicate widgets. And it would be great if we could somehow extract them into something more reusable. Noticing all of those things with our own eyes is a great skill. We all need that skill, but it isn't really reliable, right? Because we work in teams. In those teams, we have new people who have different experience. Some are just starting out, and so on. So we are humans, or muggles, after all, and we have this human factor where deadlines, our mood, and so on can impact the things that we notice and don't notice. So relying on that is not the best idea. So what I want to do is to make noticing those things automatic. So we're going to automate that. And a way to do that is to enable a workflow in CI/CD, for example. Thankfully for Code Magic, who's not here, we're working with GitHub Actions in my presentation, but you can totally do that with Code Magic, of course, and also any other CI/CD provider. I have personally used Code Magic and used it for my own projects. It's just that for this talk, I wanted to experiment with GitHub Actions because I have never done that before, and it turned out to be something very easy to set up and also very easy to demonstrate. So let's take a look at that. What we want to do is whenever we open a pull request in GitHub, for this pull request to run a workflow we will call it audit, which will do all of the static analysis checks. And if anything is wrong, then it will fail it, and we will not be able to merge our pull request until those issues are fixed. So what we do is we create a file. We will call it pullrequest.yaml in the workflows directory under GitHub in our project. We will call it audit, and it will run every time we open a new pull request or we commit to an existing pull request. And we will need to do some admin steps, such as check out repository, set up Flutter, and print Flutter version. And with that, this was the answer for what I mean by automated, but a lot of this talk will be also explaining what I mean by robust. So, code formatting is step number one. I think no one can argue that code formatting is important. It's the foundation of clean, maintainable code base. I mean, it's like literally like washing hands after restroom. I hope everyone's doing that. And so I hope everyone's formatting their code. But again, we are human, right? We can't forget that. Things can slip. So it would be great if we could check that code is properly formatted automatically. Well, we can do that by running a command Dart format with a flag set exit if changed. And what this will do, it will try to format your Dart code. And if it does succeed in formatting something, then it will return an error because this means that you need to format your code. And how this first step will look like in GitHub. And I want to mention that we are starting like with very basic steps. So everyone who has never also worked with static analysis will be on board. And we will be gradually moving on to advanced concepts. So how this looks in GitHub. We open a pull request, and we can see that some checks haven't completed yet, and our audit called pull request workflow is in action, in progress. And then we can see that all checks have failed. And if we take a look at what has failed, we will see that check code format step has failed because it has returned that one file needs formatting. And so we have to fix this issue before GitHub will allow us to merge the pull request. So this way, code formatting is always done properly in our project. But the code formatting is just one step. We also want to try and avoid bugs, maintain code style in our team, and all of those things. And to do that, we have another tool. It's basically the lint rules. And in order to enable lint rules in our Flutter project, we need to have an analysisoption.yaml file. You place this file in the root alongside your pubspec YAML file, but also if you want to have overridden rules and so on in your sub packages, you can do that, and they will take precedence before this root analysis options file. And for Flutter projects, starting from Flutter 2.3.0, I think that was the version, all of the new projects come with Flutter lints library enabled by default. And you can check that by checking the analysis options.yaml file and seeing that it includes the Flutter lints YAML file. And Flutter lints is curated package by the Flutter team. It is very not strict. It has only the rules that make sense for like majority of Flutter projects. So they really are not strict. They're just like the ultimate basic rules that every project should have. They also, of course, can be overridden. But even if we enable just that and go to our IDE, in this case, I'm using Android Studio, we can see that we have reports of 70 hints. And we can see that most of them are saying that const constructor is not used. So if we open the code, we can also see that our code is highlighted or linted. That's where the name lint comes from. And if we put our cursor onto the highlighted code, we can see the same description as in the list in the IDE. Of course, if we can see that in IDE, we can also see that in CLI by running a command flutter analyze. And if we can do that in CLI, we can also run it on CI. So our next step will be to run Flutter analyze. And we can see in GitHub that we have a lot of errors, warnings, and so on. So we need to fix them before we can merge our pull request. So talking about fixing, we have two ways. One of them is fixing manually, obviously, the errors code. Or there's also a command, CLI command called Dart fix. If you have not used it before, you should, because it really helps with a lot of lints. And what it does is that if you run Dart fix with the flag apply, it automatically fixes those issues that have auto fixes. For example, if we run it in our code base at this point, we can see that we have 25 fixes in this file, 3 fixes in this file, and so on. But it is important to note that, of course, not every rule has an auto fix, because not for every rule there is a definite answer of how it should be fixed. Some things are for you as a developer to figure out. So most of the time you'll be doing a bit of that and a bit of that. Okay, so we have fixed our issues reported by Flutter lints. All good, we can merge. But if we take a look at the code, it still doesn't look exactly right. Still, the formatting is not proper. And also, we still have the issues with the stateful widget not having a state, and media query being using the inefficient version of media query. The thing is that the Flutter lints package has approximately 100 lints. And also, just today, I've read on Twitter that they have released Flutter lints 5.0, and they have actually removed the use const constructor rule. So because they don't think that it applies to all of the project, that's for the developers to decide, which is true, but which we can discuss afterwards if you want to. So yeah, also now the rule that we have just seen will not be included in Flutter lints. But all of the lints available in the Dart language, there's more than 200 of them. Also, not sure if this number is relevant because with every new Dart language version, there's also new lints. Well, okay, not with every, but new lints can be added only with new Dart language versions. So that's also something to keep in mind. And you can check them out, all of the lints available in Dart language in the documentation. And so we decided that we don't want to use Flutter lints. We want to set up our own curated list of lints. How can we do that? Well, one way is to enable lints one by one. And I have tried doing that. And to be honest, for me, this was very hard to maintain and also very easy to miss some of the rules. And this is just really harder to maintain than another approach that I will tell you about. And if you don't want to do it yourself, there's also packages available from companies that do a lot of development, such as Very Good Ventures. They have their very good analysis, and also other agencies and companies have their own created lists. If you don't want to spend time on picking out your own lints, you can just use those if you trust them. Nothing wrong with that. But my approach, which I learned also somewhere on the internet, as all of the things nowadays, is actually the opposite completely. So what we do in this approach is we enable all of the lints. Like all of the lints, we enable them by default, and then those lints that we don't want enabled, we disable them. And we disable them explicitly, and we also document why we disable them. This way, it's easier to maintain them because you always have all of the lints included, and when new lints become available, you can also just add them to that list and configure to your needs. And also, I think this is as strict as it goes when it comes to lints available with Dart SDK. So how to do that? Well, first of all, we will create a new file called alllints.yaml, and we will put it at the root level. And in that file, we will paste all of the lints from the documentation. So that's very easy to maintain. Next, we will include all of those lints in our analysis options.yaml. Sorry. Yes, in analysis options.yaml, and in the same way as we did with Flutter lints. And when we do that, we will see warnings in our IDE. We will see warnings that say things like the rule prefer single quote is incompatible with the rule prefer double quote. That is because, as I said, the Dart language has a lot of rules, but some of them are conflicting completely because some of these rules depend on preferences of your specific team and can be configured to your specific needs. So in order to remove those warnings, we first of all need to configure conflicting rules. And we can do that by specifying the rule and giving it a flag, explicitly enabling or disabling it, false or true. For example, the same prefer double quotes false, prefer single quotes true. Also, who prefers single quotes? Put your hands up. Just one person. Double quotes? Everyone else doesn't care? Okay. Yeah, I'm team single quotes. But it depends on the team, right? But the thing is that IDE will still complain, and you need to explicitly also, in the analyzer entry in your YAML file, ignore those warnings after you have configured the conflicting rules. Great, so now that we have done that, we get 163 more hints. So our code is not that perfect as it was just one step before, right? And this talk, I have given it also previously at other conferences, and it has started its own life of its own now on Twitter. And just yesterday, Anton made a meme for me. Okay, that's very bad quality, sorry, it's a screenshot. But basically, if you're familiar with this scene, it's why is it when something happens, it's always U3, and it's the required trailing comma, prefer single quotes, and prefer constructor lints. So yeah, a little bit of fun here. And probably you won't really see here because trailing commas are just literally one little symbol, so you can't really see from here, but the code is also highlighted in our IDE. Okay, so we have fixed those issues reported by all lints. That's great. Code looks much better, pretty much as it should, but we still have issues of the unnecessary stateful widget and inefficient media query, and also duplicated widgets. And this is where the lints available in the Dart language can't really help us anymore. And we have several things that can help us, and one of them is DCM. I just want to say I'm not sponsored because people sometimes assume I am when I talk about DCM, but actually I introduced DCM to our project in the agency I worked before, and it was a game changer because as someone who spent some of their days just reviewing pull requests and like a parrot repeating the same things again and again to junior developers, this really saved my time. So yeah, I'm not sponsored. And DCM, you might also have heard it as Dart Code Metrics. They have rebranded, it's just DCM now, but still people call it Dart Code Metrics, obviously. And what it is a tool which offers, on top of the Dart rules, more than 300 of its own rules, and new rules keep being added with every release, and releases happen very often. But not only lint rules, there are also many other tools, static analysis tools, available in DCM, which we will take a look at. And one thing to know is that DCM is a paid tool, so it is what it is. But if you are an open source maintainer, you can request an open source license for free and take advantage of DCM in your open source project and make your packages much more reliable. Okay, so we decided that we're going to use DCM, and in order to do that, we go back to our analysis options.yaml file, and we can configure them under the entry Dart Code Metrics, not DCM yet. And we can do it at the same way as we discussed with regular lints, just enabling them one by one. Or if we want to just start with something, we can enable a preset. For example, the recommended preset. And this preset already contains a lot of lints. And for example, what you see on the screen right now, it's not even all of the lints in the recommended preset, but all of the lints on the screen show potential errors. So if you fix just even the things highlighted by those lints, your code base will already become much more reliable, hopefully. And this slide is not me trying to start a holy war on best state management solution. Yeah, we're not doing that here. This is libraries that DCM also provides lints for. So the standard Dart lints, Dart language lints, and Flutter SDK lints don't provide lints for third-party libraries, which makes total sense because this is very opinionated, right? But DCM doesn't have this problem, and it supports a lot of different libraries, including those that shall not be named, because it does not make assumptions about which libraries you use, but no matter which libraries you use, you should write better code with them. All right, so we have enabled the recommended preset, and we can see in a separate tab in our IDE, in DCM tab. This is a separate tab because DCM is not a plugin for Dart Analyzer. For those who understand what that means, it should mean something. So yeah, it's not. That's why it is a separate process. And we can see that we have already also a lot of warnings, such as this widget can be converted to a stateless widget, prefer dedicated media query methods instead of general ones, and avoid images without a semantic label. So we can fix some issues that we have discussed, the stateless widget one and the media query one. But also we can see that in main.dart file, the first class name does not match the file name. Try renaming it. So if we take a look at main.dart, we can see that we have the main method, but we also have our Magic Beast app widget inside of this file, which ideally should be in its own separate file. So by following, nice, of course this happens. Okay, cool. So, almost cool. The problem is that I don't see what's happening. So sorry, give me a second. All good. So yeah, by following what DCM told us to do, we have also improved our app architecture a little bit. And this is just a little example. Also, this stopped working. Yeah, nothing works. Okay, this way it can work. Let me see. Okay, now it does. Yeah, what a technical event without technical difficulties, right? So, yeah, where we were. We were here. We have made a wise decision to extract a class into its separate file. And of course, since we're talking about automating it, we want to also be able to enable it in CI. And for that, we can do DCM analyze, run DCM analyze command. And we can also, we need to install DCM, and then we can run different DCM commands, and we are doing that here. And by doing that, we can also see in CI in a similar way as we did with previous lints that we have issues, like everyone else. And a similar way to the Dart fix, we also have DCM fix, and of course, not all of the rules have automated fixes because not all of the rules have logical auto fixes, so some of the things you will have to fix manually. And now I want to show you an example of how we had DCM configured. So we had all of those things in the analyzer. This is all on top of the old lints and all of those things. And some of the things that I like particularly, for example, they're not just like true or false lints, they're actually configurable things that can help you maintain your code base style. For example, avoid banned imports. And what we want is that we, in our data and domain packages, we don't want any presentation level layer imports such as Flutter widgets, Flutter material, and so on. So we ban them. And if anyone tries to do that, then we show a lint that it is not a good idea to do that. Another banned usage example is for specific classes. For example, we don't want to allow datetime.now, and we want to use our dedicated class, time provider, so that we can also test all of those places, all of those classes, and so on for all of the things that you need in your specific code base. Another thing that can help us maintain code layout and structure is member ordering. We can do that for general Dart classes, but also specifically for widgets. For example, if you have OCD like me and you always need to have those methods be in the file in the order, otherwise you start to get angry, then this fixes and you won't have any fights with your team about that. And also this makes the code much more easier to navigate and understand where you can encounter what. And DCM is more than just a linter, as I have mentioned. So sometimes we refactor code, and by refactoring code, we don't even realize that we have removed libraries and we don't even use those libraries anymore. So it would be great if we could check for unused libraries. And we can do that with DCM check dependencies command. And if we run it in CI, we can then see that it has failed because we have Flutter lint is not used anymore, Flutter test because who needs that, and Google Fonts because that was actually the only one I was expecting to see there. So yeah, you can also find the unused dependencies. Another thing that is specific to software evolution is that some code becomes unused eventually, right? Not only dependencies, but code itself, such as methods, like this unused method. I don't know how it got there. Also, unused widget class or unused widget file itself. And it would be great if we could not have this stale code in our code base dragging along and just remove it when it's not being used. And for that, DCM offers two commands, DCM check unused files and DCM check unused code. And we can run them on CI, obviously, and see that we have unused file, unused widget.dart. And we also have unused method, which is called unused method. I should have come up with something more original, but yeah, my imagination finished on the first slide with a dash, with a hat. So also unused constructor in unused widget, and in general, unused widget is an unused class. Anyone calculated how many times I said unused in the last 30 seconds? Well, basically, as you have figured out, we can get rid of unused code in any of its format. Okay, and unused code is one problem, and another problem is duplicate code. So in here, we have two different views, the Luminara view and a Qualys view. And we have same methods. The signature of the methods is the same, but the titles of the methods are different. And this is a very simple example, right? Because for demo purposes, it's easier to show simple examples. But we can imagine that this is a big code with, I don't know, 40 lines of code, which does the same calculations in two different places. And this can lead to bugs and errors, because if we change the code in one place and don't change in the other one, then we'll have to find out the reason why in one place it's calculated correctly and in the other one it's not. So we can, with DCM, check code for duplication, which goes over your code. And by signature of the code and some magical shenanigans, finds duplicate code in your code base and also tells you that in CI. In our case, this is just one method, but this could also be a huge chunk of code. Last thing that I will show you from DCM involves a little bit of dark magic. And we have been talking a lot about analysis today. And specifically, we were talking about Flutter, right? And in Flutter, everything is a widget, so it would make sense if we could have widget analysis. And we have that in DCM. And it's called the command, if you call DCM analyze widgets and select the reporter as HTML, for example, you can also do that in CLI. You get this pretty HTML page where you can see a list of all of the widgets in your application with different kind of metrics, such as quality score, number of fields, methods, used widget, used by widget, and the one that we care about right now, similar widgets. So if we take a look at, for example, a Qualys view, we can see that it has 4 similar widgets. So let's take a look inside of that widget to see what it means. For example, Shadow Police view, we have different quality metrics. You can set them up yourself, but we won't be focusing on them today. What we care about is similar widgets, and here we can see that 100% of the widget tree matches Zephyr view, and then you can see the same thing for all of the other beast views for Luminara. I have no idea how to read the next one, and the Qualys. So we can see from static analysis that we have literally 100% same widgets. So by checking out those things, we can refactor our code. And now, instead of hard coding specific beasts, we have a reusable beast view where we specify parameters, and then we can map any list to a list of widgets, and this will be much more scalable and reusable. Another thing that you can see there in the widget report is the full widget tree. And this is very useful if you are using design systems and you need to understand where is this widget used, where you can look at it. And this also shows all of the conditional parameters and so on. And this is very useful for navigating your widget tree, especially if you are just onboarded to the project and there's already a million of widgets. But even DCM doesn't solve every single problem. Obviously, we have our own issues, especially if we are developing packages and have something very specific. So what happens if the rule doesn't exist? Are we doomed and we have to rely on our heads? Well, obviously not, since I'm here and talking about that. And the next question is, how many of you use Firebase? Okay, quite a lot. And Firebase Analytics particularly? Okay, some people. So any ideas what is wrong with this code?
It's a long name.
It is a long name, right? And the problem with long names in Firebase is that if the name is more than 40 characters long, this event will just not be logged. It will just not be logged, and there's no way for you to find out if the users are actually not clicking on that button or if there's something wrong with your analytics. So we learned this the hard way because something wasn't logged and it was obviously clicked. And yeah, and this is not the only rule. There's also many other rules on how Firebase events and parameters should be logged. So this is one of them. It would be great if we could, in our IDE, see something like that Firebase Analytics max event name length is 40 characters for all of the event names that are longer than that. It would be even better if we could also automatically trim that event name. So even if it doesn't be the same name as your PM has requested, at least it will be logged, which is definitely better for everyone. So we can do that. And there are several ways how we could do that. And all of them involve Dart Analyzer plugins. Dart Analyzer plugins is a way for you to add functionality to the Dart Analyzer as a plugin. I should have written dictionaries at this point. And they think that you need to know about raw Dart Analyzer and in general about Dart Analyzer is that, first of all, the plugins are experimental. And probably if you have worked with a huge monorepo, you understand why, because Dart Analyzer performance isn't really the best at this point. And because of that, there are more recommendations. You can only enable one plugin per analysis option.yaml, so just one single plugin. And if you, for example, write your own plugin, you enable that, and then your friend writes another plugin, well, you can't enable that, so you have to choose. Enabling an analyzer plugin increases how much memory the analyzer uses. And there's also a recommendation that do not use analyzer plugins if you use a development machine with less than 16 gigabytes of memory, or you use a monorepo with more than 10 pops big and analysis options YAML files. So these things we need, I mean, you can, but you probably won't want to. And one thing that doesn't solve these problems particularly, but solves the problem of me wanting to use my own plugin and wanting to use my friend's plugin is a plugin of its own called CustomLint. CustomLint is a library maintained by Invertase. And what it does, it is an abstraction over the Dart Analyzer plugin API. It offers a much easier to use API, also debugging and testing tools for your CustomLint, and also the opportunity to use several CustomLint extensions in your single project. So what you would do to use that is use the library. And then, yeah, this slide describes all of the things it does better than the raw Dart Analyzer, but I already told you that. So if we want to use CustomLint in our project, we need to do two big steps. First one is to define a CustomLint package and actually write our lint rules. And the next step is to use that package in our project. So let's start with step number 1. And we will create our Magic Beast lint repository where we will describe our own custom lint. In order to do that, we need dependencies on Analyzer, Analyzer plugin, and Custom Lint Builder. And I will walk you through some code of custom lints that I have written for this Firebase 40 characters limit event. I do not ever copy that code. I'm not responsible for it being performant and so on, because writing custom lints turn out to be a completely different endeavor than actually writing apps, because you need to understand like how the language works and not how the apps works, and that is actually a different thing, which I learned also the hard way, as all of those things. So this is just an algorithm, and of course, depending on your own use case, you will have to make your own choices. So first thing is that we need to extend a plugin base. So we will call our Magic Beast linter, which extends plugin base. And from there, we need to override one method that returns a list of lint rules, which we will now write. So we want to create a Firebase Analytics event length rule.dart. And in order to create our own lint rule, we need to extend Dart lint rule. And in the constructor, specify code. And the code is what you see in the IDE or in the CLI report. So we have the name, we have the problem message, and we also can specify the error severity, such as warning, error, info. That's even larger piece of code, but still the same. Then we need to override the run method, where we have several useful parameters, such as custom lint resolver, error reporter, and custom lint context. All of those things needed for you to understand what's going on with your code and if it has any issues. And finally, we have the optional override of get fixes, where we can, if we want, to specify auto fixes, such as the trimming fix, like to trim to 40 characters. So let's take a look at how to actually implement the Firebase rule. And for that, first of all, we need to add like a register of the context for every time any method is invoked, like any method. And method is a function of a class. And that's actually different things, because if it would be a function, this would not be called. And I also learned that the hard way. So sorry, just ranting. Anyway, for every time a method is called in our code, we want to check if this method name is log event, and if the argument list is not empty, and then if that first argument, which is our event name, is longer than 42, because this is not a string, this is the actual line, which also includes quotes on both sides. And if that's true, then we use our reporter and we tell report an error on this location for this length, the event name length, and with this code, the one that said that 40 characters is maximum. So when this is then used in our project, we can see this in IDEs. One thing with custom-lint that I noticed while I was working on this presentation is that it was not showing those reports in Android Studio for some reason. It might be resolved at this point. I'm not up to date with every update, but sometimes, basically, custom-lint is kind of VS Code first. So if something is not working in Android Studio, maybe try checking it out in VS Code, even if you don't like it, as I don't. Also, VS Code users here, put your hands up. Sorry, nothing personal, totally nothing personal. I just come from native Android background, so Android Studio is where I was born, and that's how, yeah, I still use that in Flutter. It's just a matter of preference, but Android Studio is better. Anyway, so what we want to see then in our IDE, which is VS Code, that when we log an event, which name is longer than 40 characters, it gets highlighted, which is linted. We will get to how to actually do that in just a moment, but we also want to provide a fix, an optional fix. And to do that, we need to define another class, call it whatever you want, in our case, string param name fix, which extends Dart fix. And then we also need to override one method. It's once again run, and it has even more parameters that we can use to understand what to do. Again, we register this on every method invocation. Then we call this line of code to check that the error is actually happening in this code and not that this is the error's code. If it's not, then we just return. No need to check anything else. And if it is, then we create a change builder. And in change builder, we describe what kind of change this will do to your code. So first of all, we say the message and the priority. Priority thing also doesn't work in Android Studio, but I think it works in VS Code. But that's also not that super important, just something to keep in mind. Priority is at what location in the drop-down as the fix shows in your little menu. Okay, and then we need to actually describe how to fix this. So what we do is very simple. We just substring the name and give it less characters and put it in quotes so that it actually gets logged to Firebase Analytics. And then as a final step, we need to specify it in the first get fixes override in our lint rule, as mentioned before. And this is what we will hopefully see in our IDE. Okay, so we have written and described our lint rule and our fix. And what we want to do next is we actually want to enable it in our project. So step 2 is to use that package in our project. And we need to depend on two things, on custom lint, obviously, and on our own lint package. Then in our analysis options.yaml file, we also enable the custom lint plugin, and that's all we need to do. So if you want to also enable not only your Magic Abyss lint, but also anyone else's lint that use custom lint package, you can do that, and it will work out of the box. And that is also a great benefit of using custom lint package. And I think a lot of people, most people who if they're writing custom lints, they usually use custom lint package. So that's kind of how it solves the problem of one analyzer plugin per project. We can then, of course, run it in CLI and also on CA. And in the same way, we will see the issues here that max event name is 40 characters. Please fix that. And this was the real issue which I encountered in my project. And then I also told that to a DCM team. And a couple of weeks later, we got this. So writing your custom lint for Firebase is not relevant anymore, because this can do it better, because it's not only for event name length, but also for characters that can be used and so on. Yeah, but it's still very fun to write custom lints, even if you're not going to use them in your project. Just understanding how that works and breaking your brain a little bit, it was a lot of fun. And yeah, this was more or less it for today. Of course, there is more which you can explore on your own, which is more things that you can do within the analysis options, like strict cast and promoting values of errors and warnings and so on. There's many more things in DCM. There's also a lot of custom lint packages by different companies. Also, we can use any kind of extensions in your VS Code or Android Studio. Also, I think there are a lot of GitHub actions. Some of them don't only report the issues that have been found in your project, but also open a pull request with fixes. So you can also go further and automate that. And also for duplicate code, you can use JavaScript copy-paste detector, which also supports Dart and YAML and so on. So yes, we have automated our static code analysis system with GitHub Actions. We have put in code formatting, all of the lints, DCM and custom lint. And this is how our full audit workflow looks like. There's a lot of steps which ensure that your code base is nice and clean. And not one, there's actually, I think, 4 things coming up. Anyway, a couple of things coming soon. One of them is that the Dart team, Flutter team, are working on different formatting style, and you can enable this formatting as experimental by following this issue, which also adds automatically trailing commas where it makes sense, which can also lead to a lot of code changes. So this will need to be applied step by step. And also they're looking for feedback. So if you are willing to experiment and try it out on your own project, go to this issue to find out how to do that. Another thing, which hopes to, not hopes, but actually already works, but still kind of work in progress, thing that will improve analyzer behavior and memory consumption is a workspaces feature. So if you want to learn more about that, you can do it by following this issue. And one last thing is that tomorrow is a big day for me because I have written a book. I have co-written it with Jaime and Ezra, also known industry experts, and it's launching tomorrow. If you want to order, you can do that there. Static analysis is just one of the chapters. There's 11 more, and yeah, I've been working on it for a long time, and I hope it will be useful, but yeah.
No discounts for attending.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
No discounts for the book for attending.
I mean, today is the last day of pre-order, and there is 5% discount already by default, so you can make use of that if you order it today. You have a couple of hours left. Unfortunately, I'm the writer. I'm not fully, don't have full control of the book. There's a whole team behind it, Pact, the publisher. So, yeah, there's also that. But if you join my other talk somewhere in the future, I will probably be raffling books instead of this. So maybe you can follow me on social media to see where that happens. And I'll be also very grateful for your feedback for this talk so that I can become a better speaker. It will take only 30 seconds of your time. And thank you very much. And let's do some questions.
Somebody has a question?
One question.
You can stand up, say your name.
My name is Vinit. So my question is, if custom linking is that expensive, right? Why not abstract and validate through tests? The issue that you faced in Firebase event name.
I mean, you can do that, but I think with lints, the feedback loop is much faster. You get this, you understand that this is an issue as soon as you write it, and you fix it there. And also, yeah, I think lints are even before. If you can fix that with lints, fix that with lints. If you can't, fix that with tests. So yeah, I prefer lints for that.
Sorry, before the best question wins something.
Felix Felicis, yes.
So
And this is the last one that I have, like very the last one. I gave this at other conferences, and this is the last one. So you might be the luckiest person alive. No exaggeration.
Okay, cool. Your question about when you create custom limbs, I never done that before. You put the dependencies under the dependencies, not the dev dependencies.
Yeah, because this is in the project of the lint and not the project of your app. So the lint is a project of its own.
Separate project.
Yes, the lints are separate projects, so it's a
Okay,
separate
so
project.
basically you make a separate package and then
Yes.
you import that in your.
Yes, as you can see, the Magic Beast lint is a separate package, and I added as a dev dependency in my Magic Beast package. Yes.
Okay, cool. I was thinking that we were going to do it in the same app and then, now need to make a separate package. Thank you for doing that. One suggestion, there was this things about, Harry Potter and the magic and stuff. Do it manually or automatically.
Yeah.
So there is a magic that Hermione performed, Ribeiro. to fix the glasses. So perhaps we can use that.
Okay. Nice. Nice.
I have many questions, but first one. My name is Vladimir, and my question is, like you have, for example, many projects already, like many repositories in your team. It's a big team. There is already a bunch of legacy code, etc., and you want to introduce this static analysis. And is there a way to enable this and perform all these checks only for changes in pull requests?
That's a great question. In the standard Dart, no. In DCM, yes. There's a feature called baseline, which you enable once you introduce DCM to your existing code base, and the issues will be reported only from changes registered after that.
So, like once you do this, it will look only for changes in GitHub pull requests.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
You said you had many questions.
Yeah, I have many. Do you have time?
Okay, take another one. Yeah.
Okay, about DCM, you said that it works with many libraries, like popular libraries.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't it bring more dependencies in terms of if you want to increase version of library or you need to increase version of library, for example, block, right? And it introduces new kind of code style, for example, new way to work with this pattern. But DCM shows you error. Isn't tricky?
I guess so. It could be. I mean, block specifically doesn't do that often. It did it once with the 8th version, where it's just completely redid how we write blocks. But yeah, this is tricky. I think this should be managed case by case. And the DCM team is very responsive, so probably they would respond fast, but there would be a time where you would need to either not update until the other tool is updated or maybe ignore it for a while. So depending on your use case.
Very good questions, by the way.
Yeah, all of them are great.
Anybody else? Now is the right moment. Don't be shy. We have Daria from Riga, by the way. So.
I'm your neighbor.
All right, but maybe later, maybe during the networking. But thank you again.
Yeah, wait, 1 second. Thank you. I have to give it for the Hermione reference. Thank you. That's you. Sorry, it was subjective. I said that. But your questions are great.
Actually, I was counting on that Hermione thing.
You were preparing.
We should drink it before release.
What is it, by the way?
Felix Felicis is a lucky potion, which basically, if you drink, that was in the movie and in the books, whatever you try to do, you would be successful.
Wow.
So yeah, before release is a good idea, especially on Friday.
And that was the last one.
Yes, it was the last
Right.
one.
Cool. I'm gonna pull up the other presentations. Very quickly. So let's see. So. Yeah, do you have it here?
Absolutely. So just a quick reminder, we're gonna have another speech, and then pizza. Engineer at Lightyear, and maybe somebody of you know Lightyear. They're an Estonian startup in the finance industry. They're getting pretty popular now, and we could say it's an enterprise application, right, Alar?
Yeah, I would guess so, yes.
Okay, cool. So it's gonna talk about how enterprise applications can run with Flutter. It's a question that I hear many times because Flutter is a new technology. Well, not so new nowadays, but pretty recent. And many people wonder, does it work in production for big applications? That's the question, and we'll hear the answer soon. So, if Alar, you are ready. Yes. And you can click here, yeah. Cool.
Yes. Yeah, 1 moment.
Try again. I just.
Yep.
Cool.
Screen.
We are raising expectations.
This is not right. And put it ready on the right screen.
Cool.
All right.
Alar, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So, my topic today is creating Lightyear with Flutter. The idea is, how Stefan already mentioned, is that simply be basically a case study of how you can use Flutter, how you can actually make it into an application that is used by a ton of people. I'll try to not say any numbers because not any like absolute numbers here because I can't. I'm not allowed to. So if I do, correct me please. But that's the case. I'll try my hardest. So what we will go through. I'll go through a quick introduction of who I am, hopefully giving my my talk some credibility, my words that I actually know what I'm speaking of. I'll go over what Lightyear does. I'll hopefully show a quick demo as well of basically just go through the app, so you will kind of know what we're talking about and what do we do. And get a bit technical, not as technical as the last talk. We'll simply go through how we have built the app, what decisions we have made, basically a very high level architecture of what has helped us into basically reach our goal of developing as quickly as possible and just try to reach as good of a pace as possible to bring our app to our customers. Go over the design system that we have created for us, which is, well, basic for us, but maybe not for everyone, and some of the tricks of that we have used. So me, I started with Android development in 2011, 12, something like this. So I think I was born with Eclipse then, which wasn't as fun as Android Studio. That was great after that. But in 2016, I switched over to iOS development. I did iOS development for about 4 or 5 something years, and then kind of switched to Flutter. So When I first went from Android to iOS, I had no idea what the world of iOS was. I just kind of applied to an iOS position, thought I'll try. I just liked the company, which was ByteDrive. They took me, so I started learning iOS. I was there for 5 years, and after that I basically just jumped into Flutter headfirst as well, and here I am. So for the last 10 years, for the last 3 years, I have been using Flutter as on a daily basis in Lightyear. So regarding the past experience, Skype is what I started with, not on mobile though, on basically back-end tooling or back office tooling and automation. But from there I went into Moongascade, which is a popular company in Estonia doing Android development, and then switched over to ByteDrive for iOS development, and now in Lightyear. So, what is Lightyear? Basically what we are doing is we are trying to create successful investors. We are just a brokerage platform. You can buy stocks, you can buy bonds, funds, whatnot. Main idea is to try to make investing as easy as possible and as transparent as possible for everyone. Our offering is exactly global stocks and funds, access to everywhere, not only local banks. Local banks mostly give you access to, let's say, local stocks, which is for us here in Estonia would be Baltic instruments, maybe some US stocks, but not that good of an offering really. Not to mention the high fees, high conversion fees, and what else is out there. We make it all with localization in mind. With localization, I just don't mean translating the application into different languages, which there are many of in Europe, but also bringing local stocks, bringing local tax wrappers for Estonia, which would then be investeerimiskonto system, and UK would be ISA, and so on. So the whole localization process within our application can be quite tricky and quite difficult, and which kind of also means that application development will get very difficult, because the same screen can have so many different configurations and views based on the user that is using the application, based on its country, tax country, and so on. And ultimately, simple, fair, and transparent pricing. So we're trying to be the lowest, trying to take the lowest fees possible that we can in order to still be sustainable as a business, and that's it. So far, we have been doing really good. We're getting ton of feedback that our application is really loved by our users. Getting these high points and reviews with these numbers already is quite a good showcase, at least for us, and we believe so. The feedback, especially on the mobile app itself and the UX of it, has been great. We've been praised a lot for it, and I think one of the reasons there that we have been able to do that is exactly the choice of using Flutter and using kind of the team setup that we have, which I'll go into. The small team exactly is that at this moment, for example, we only have 2 mobile developers. For most companies, I guess, at this stage, we would already have maybe 5, 6. If it's multi-platform, if it's like native applications, you would have maybe 3 plus 3, at least something like this. 2 people writing the whole app that we have right now is quite little, but it works very well for us. And I think only Flutter is to kind of thank for that, because we have found our own ways and found our own kind of processes in order to do that. And with Flutter, it's just quite easy, to be honest. So at this moment, I think I would go through a quick demo of what the application looks like. Just to give a kind of overview of what it is and how complex the application kind of is or can be. So once you're logged in, you're greeted with your portfolio view, which at this moment is a bit not that interesting. In here it's maybe more, since I just tapped this little button here, which hides all the numbers. So hopefully, if I have done everything correctly, you shouldn't see my portfolio anywhere, or not any absolute values at least. But yeah, so your portfolio overview, you can go through different time frames, you can go through all of your investments, how they have been doing. You can start exploring different stocks, you can start exploring different, basically tons of different features in regards to the instruments that you are interested in. You can go through the news of those, you can go through most popular ones, different collections that we have curated for you, calendar, so all of the dividend and the events and so on. So given that all of this takes a lot of UX thinking and a lot of design thinking to go through in order for it to actually be understandable and simple and for everyone to understand. I'm guessing very few of you know what EPS means, for example, but the application should be easy enough so that it would be kind of dumbed down to everyone, for everyone to understand. And if you are using the application, it should be made simple for you. So in a really like small view, this is kind of it. Buying stocks, going through them, finding them, buying, selling, holding a portfolio, all of your different activities. That's kind of it. So from technical sides, so we have been using Flutter from the very beginning of Lightyear. I have been at Lightyear for 3 years now. Lightyear itself is about 3.5, maybe 4 years old, somewhere around there. And it was a very mindful choice in the beginning to use Flutter. It was a very scary choice at times, of course, because Flutter back then wasn't really that much used yet. It was in a state where not everyone would have been brave enough to make the decision. React Native was really, really popular, and it was, I'm guessing that React Native would have been the obvious choice to go for if people would want cross-platform. The founders knew that they did not want to go native way because of the difficulty of finding developers, and they would kind of, they preferred development speed over having a native application. So they opted to use Flutter. The goal was to develop quickly and with performance in mind, because we knew that we needed to have lots of charts. We needed to have those charts configurable. You could zoom in and out. You could take, with multi-fingers, you could go through the chart and see different time frames. There's a lot of animations and different like animation performance heavy stuff going on at the same time. So they knew that Flutter had kind of had this advantage. Back then they still had some stutter issues, but obviously they were something that ultimately were to be polished out, but this was something that Flutter was supposed to excel at. So Flutter was the choice that they made. Web app came a bit later, I think about 1.5 years after launching mobile. We understood that we also needed the web app. Flutter was also in mind for a moment. We quickly diminished that idea. We actually can run our mobile app in web as well, and we did for a while. And the idea was not to release it for users, but we had a cool GitHub action setup that giving a specific label to pull requests, it actually just took this branch, ran it in our local CI machine, and you had an URL under this pull request to go see the changes right away. So you didn't have to pull it, run it, see how it works. You could kind of check the changes right away there and approve it quickly without needing to build it. Ultimately, we kind of removed it or stopped using it because many of the dependencies needed to be kept up to date in order to support web. It kind of wasn't worth it. People didn't use it as much as we hoped they would, and that's that. So for web app, we had many people who were really, really good at React already, so it kind of was the obvious choice to find other developers later, and that's that. And backend is using Java, as this is the preferred choice in fintech world for some reason. So tech stack, it's definitely not GetX. I'm really hoping that people do not like GetX here. If they do, we can talk later. We do still have a gettex imports in our repository, which we have been trying to get rid of since I joined for 3 years. It's I think we're down to like 10 imports maybe, so some final classes to refactor and we should be done with it. But in reality, this is what it is. So we're not using any architectural, however you call it, view pattern dependency that will kind of tell us how to write our logic. So for any kind of view pattern, we just went full vanilla MVVM. So why did we do this? Is that, or let's start the other way around. We started discussing in which direction should we go. We knew that we wanted to get rid of gettex, and obviously block was the #1 thing that whole internet is praising and everyone should be using. Provider was kind of the next one. Riverpod was there as well. There are some others, but they all have a learning curve, and they are all quite Dart or Flutter specific, let's say. And everyone who uses the dependency on its own kind of praises it, which kind of means that if you're looking around for developers to join your company, they might not want to join because you are using X or you are using Y. If we went this just normal model view model route, then everyone kind of knows how it works. Any decent developer should kind of know the basic pattern of what it provides. So it made writing classes and reading them and understanding them really, really easy. So this kind of means that any developer in our company who isn't maybe even doing mobile can really quickly go and take a look at the pull request, and they really kind of understand what happens there right away without needing to know how all the block different components work, for example, or what are the problems there, what might happen there, and so on. So this was kind of the choice. There is an overview soon later as well that you will see how we're kind of doing it. For routing, it's autoroute. I'm not sure why. I guess it was the easiest. It just did its job the best way that we wanted it to. DO for networking, which is also kind of the de facto choice. We're using Getit. We're not really using it heavily. It's simply used for a few services that we want to get access to in some random places where you don't maybe have access to context, you don't want to have it, but you kind of know that it should exist there. It's lazily loaded somewhere. So Getit is used, but very sparsely. And Rx start. We love Rx start. This is also something maybe that kind of might bring some extra complexity. Streams can be difficult to understand and difficult to read, especially when you're using Rx start, which kind of means that we are combining, switch mapping different streams. There's a lot of logic happening in the stream building, but ultimately it's also very powerful if you know what you're doing. And streams, wrote here, if everything Flutter is a widget, then in our app everything is a stream. Then streams are kind of the baseline of everything that we have built in our app. So every data entry that's in the UI is basically goes there via streams through all of the components. And this kind of also means that our app is fully declarative for all of the changes that happen in any data layer. It just goes up to the UI directly via streams, which kind of also explains the heavy use of Rx start. So wrong button. So this is the very, very high level overview and very simplistic overview of then what happens, or how, let's say if you're writing a new feature, if you're writing new widgets, then this is kind of what happens. Every widget or view has a view model, which we kind of call controllers. Widget does nothing but view. It should never handle any business logic. It should never handle any requests. It doesn't know anything about where data comes from, whatnot. It should only get data from the view model. The view model handles all of the business logic and knows where to get data from for this view. That's kind of it. Then the view model is using either interactors or repositories. Repositories are exactly the kind of classes that that can be switched out, that can be changed, that now know how this data is stored in the application and how the whole updating syncing logic happens. So let's say a repository has a balance repository has a balance data storage. It only gives out a stream. So the view model that listens to the balance repository, it doesn't need to know where the data is coming from. It can be from API, it can be from a cache, it can be from a database. And what's the good side about this is that we can change those decisions later really easily. We don't have to change any of the code apart from within the repository or behind that. So this kind of gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of what we are using, if you're using databases, if you're using simple caches and whatnot. And these are kind of the changes that we have done over time. Sometimes we use Drift for a simple SQLite database. We moved away from that. Right now we're just using our own kind of simple JSON caching, just storing it in a file. Basically, that's it. It's way simpler for us. You don't have to deal with a lot of the stuff, but none of the code never had the need to be refactored just because of this change. So I'll go a bit into all of these things specifically as well. So the widget and view model. In here, we also use something called Flutter hooks. This was a heavy discussion in our team as well, because hooks is obviously taken from React. One of the mobile developers back then came from a React background, and he really wanted to use hooks. Most of the mobile guys were against it. Ultimately, we kind of started liking it as well. So here you can kind of see hook usages. These are our custom hooks, I believe. And it simply reduced code indentation and clutter for us. So if we initially kind of went more of the Dart way, we had a controller builder that you put the class in, it builds the controller, and you have a body there where you then continue with the controller already being built or with the state of the controller. In there you started using data stream listener or whatever the exactly widget was, and it kind of already created like 2, 3, 4 levels of indentation with just creating the controller and just listening to a stream, and that's it. So this way we could kind of start reducing it. The downside is that you kind of also have to trust or know how Flutter hooks work, because you need to know how rebuilds work. You need to know when your widget is actually like marked as dirty, as needed to be rebuilt and whatnot. So there is some level of like learning and trusting it as well, but it has worked well for us, and we really started to love using it. So apart from that, as I mentioned, widget is simply the UI, and view model handles all of the business logic and the data side of it. And every view model for us always emits a single stream. It can emit multiple ones, of course, but usually it doesn't make sense. A single stream for every widget that we have. So this kind of starts showing, this is a very simple simple case already, but this is one of the view models for when you're starting to enter a limit order in our application. Then it kind of already shows that we have 6 places where data is basically being pulled in. And this is kind of a simple case because you don't have any, you can start adding start with values for different streams. If you know that they can take time, you can start mapping some of the stream entries in the middle there before they get built in the return method or before they are yielded. So this is a simple case, but it kind of also shows that you need to know and understand how this code works. If I were to hire a junior developer right now, then I'm guessing that most of them would kind of be a bit bamboozled and not understand how this works, especially if there's an issue with some of those. So if one of those streams doesn't emit at this moment, then the whole thing doesn't get built, right? So, but this is a knowledge that I know based on using this already. So there is some complexity that this adds, but it's also very powerful if you know what you're doing. So this is an example of the stream that it sends out. It builds the model within this build method. Actually, underneath, it can do a lot of different like parsing, mapping, all of the business logic that's necessary, all of the formatting, and just sends the data to the UI, and UI then uses it to display for the user. And this is most of our view models are basically just these stream builders. We might not have any other code in those controllers at all. And repositories. So this is one of the one of the parts that make development really quick and easy for us is that we have built within those repositories we have made an implementation that are called fetchers, which kind of handles a lot of data logic for us. So if I, as a developer, simply need to support a new API for storing some kind of data objects, then I can simply create a new repository class. I will create a fetcher, I will name it, and I have two methods that I need to always provide. So the source, where to get this from. So this then would be the JSON the network call that simply has to be a JSON object in response, and the mapper class, and that's it. So from this, I already get a lot of functionality, and basically all of the functionality that I will always need for writing most of my views. So this repository now emits a stream, which is just get businesses, and this threshold thing is kind of a key property that we use throughout all of our repositories, is that we have set either thresholds that we ask in a method, or we just maybe set something here without the possibility of changing it from where you call it, which kind of shows data validity time. So what this means that if the threshold is 5 minutes, then it will always fetch the data to the controller, to the UI that was cached already. But if the data that was passed on was older than 5 minutes, then it gets updated. And again, since everything is a stream, everything goes through all of the stream objects, then it kind of means that on the UI level, on the controller level, and actually also on the repository level, we kind of never have to think about how data gets updated, how important this data is, where is the syncing logic. We just kind of write this. We put thresholds that we know that are important, maybe some app configs. You put 1 hour, doesn't matter. If it's some price, instrument price, then we might even put 5 seconds, because it's really important that the price on UI is up to date everywhere. And that's it. So if to think about this solution, it's not ideal, but the API or how all of the repositories and fetchers are built up, it means that the developer life is really, really easy. If a new feature is being built, it's very common usually that the APIs are similar, your mapping is similar, and all of the data part up to the widget is always very similar and the same. So it's really, really quick to start developing new features by just creating these repositories, mapping these endpoints, creating a model, and that's it. That's that. So as a summary from that side, then streams all the way from cache to the UI with this threshold is how we just send data from down up to the UI, and the widgets or controllers have no idea. So this kind of means that we almost never use any features in our application. It's very, very rare if we do. Only maybe if we want to force sync something, or if we know that on some view or some button was pressed, then we might wait for a response of some repository to sync something, but that's kind of it. The whole UI is just stream based. So even in the example that I showed you before in the demo, if you I switched the account from my personal to my business one, then it took a moment to make the switch. The stream got emitted new events, all of the new boxes or the caches were used underneath, but all of the widgets that care about this, that need account information, we're kind of separately getting those events from this one broadcast stream from this one cache. So as a developer, when I write widgets, when I write all of the components in any of our views, then I don't really care. I just listen to the stream and that's it. Yes. So, design system. I guess it's also something that like it might be common for a lot of you. It might be not that common for many, as much as I've gone around and seen how people work. But if you have any kind of well-maintained UA library system or any kind of component system that you do sync up with your designers, then it's an immense help as well. So this is kind of the list, not the whole list, but a big part of the list that of widgets that we have always synced up with our designers. All of the controls have different states, different colors, different theme settings. Everything is absolutely mapped to the UI widget level, so that when designers using Figma do have different states already mapped as properties in the Figma as their components, then we can map them basically one-to-one to our components, and it's that simple. This kind of also allows for us as developers, we can kind of build our own features by not really needing any design help. So most of the work that designers do is just creating either new custom components for some custom implementations, but all of the bottom sheets, all of the flow screens, the layouts, everything is kind of de facto what we do anyway. If there is a change to our design language, then it happens in one place, and that's it. It should work out of the box everywhere as is. The problems here is that I've seen that have happened is that people start creating too many components. You really need to go through and think through what components should be in a design system and what shouldn't. Some are simply really often often reused widgets that maybe don't deserve to be in a design system, that it's synced with designers, but simply something that you use on a project level as developers. It doesn't always need to be fully synced because it really takes a lot of effort to maintain these things. We have weekly meetings with our designers where we kind of go over a lot of the changes that they do, and we still don't get to all of the changes that they have done to different components, because as always, as design evolves, different new features kind of require some small nitpicky changes to some of your views, but they don't always mention it to developers, so you start like figuring out, hey, that this thing doesn't exist, and so on. So it takes effort, which kind of also means that by picking your battles, I mean pick the components that you agree to have fully in sync with. The less you have, the better quality design system will be, but as much as you can is always better. And a custom theme with a semantic color palette, which kind of comes with it, I guess. And I'm guessing most of the companies will have done something like this anyway. So none of the color systems, none of the color schemes that we use are native or not coming from Material, Cupertino, whatnot. It's always our own. And this kind of makes it agnostic to add any kind of themes as well, right? So on native side, at least on iOS side, remember it was really stuck that if you are setting a color, let's say for a light mode or dark mode, then on Flutter it shouldn't really matter, right? You just have a theme object, you have a semantic name for it. Of course, you can do it native as well, but if you do it as native as possible, then they kind of forced you into those two ways. On Flutter, if you have a proper semantic color palette with your theme and your custom theme that your whole app is using, it kind of means that you can create any amount of themes that you want, switch between them. They don't have to be light and dark, right? That's it. And this is one of the examples. It looks really bad here in this resolution, but I promise it looks better in Figma. But this is simply one component, one control field, I believe. Yes, one control field property that has all of the states, that has all of the different styles it can have, and under the different theme backgrounds or different themes that we have, everything here. So this is kind of the source of truth for us as developers. If we map all of that to our widget, then it works anywhere. So anything we select, we can also see the properties that designers use. So they also create the same way, the components the same way, and let's say checked if it's a switch or what type it is, what theme is it on, and if it's disabled or not. then we kind of know that these are also the 4 inputs that we kind of need to create this matrix of our own widget in Flutter. And automations. We're also using GitHub Actions, which we love. We used to use CodeMagic. We switched over. I don't think we don't have anything bad to say as well, but I think we simply wanted to reduce costs. We were anyway heavily using GitHub Actions on our backend side, so we tried to use it. We opted to use it on our mobile side as well. It works really well, and what we like about GitHub Actions actually is also that, like, since it's your custom kind of scripts anyway, and you know how it's set up, it means that it's easy to switch over to any CI system in the future, if you just want to move about and want something else to be used. So you're kind of fully in control of what happens, how your app is built, what steps do you want to take, what kind of output you want at what moment, and so on. Release cycles, fully automated, basically up to the point where you have to also just tap release, because we're not confident enough to release automatically, which I guess no one should be confident, just in case. And internal beta builds. So on every pull request or every master commit as well, we trigger internal beta builds for the whole company to use, to kind of test for us, because we don't have testers. So the company employees are the testers. The idea is that automating all of this, and of course code analysis and auto formatting as well, kind of covers what the previous talk was about. We don't have it as fancy. We hope we do someday. But what we like about it as well is that if you automate all of these things, you can like forever fight about code styles, like how to map it, how to, if there should be a line between there and that, whatnot. Then all of this is documented. All of this can be discussed in pull requests. All of this can be kind of mapped down. No one can argue that, hey, like it should be styled like this or that, since it's already written in the rules that you have all agreed to and committed in your work repository. This also goes for, let's say, a release cycle, internal builds, everything that happens, you know that it's committed, all of the changes are traceable, you know why some change happened. If we were to use CodeMagic, not to this CodeMagic, but all of these changes are kind of invisible, and you might not know what happened to some configuration. I'm sure there are some logs somewhere, but I'm guessing that pull requests to script files are way more obvious to see. And that's, I guess, one of the biggest upsides of it, that it all works as documentation. So if you have a person that's joining your company, if you have a new developer, you need to explain how a release cycle works, for example, then it's all automated. It's in code. So you can kind of take this up front and start going through how it all works. And it's black and white. It works, that's how it works, that's it. Same thing goes for, let's say, code analysis and formatting. It's all there, it's all been discussed, and that's great. So, to conclude, the key takeaways. So, using Flutter, I think that was by far like one of the boldest choices to make in 2020, but it was totally worth it. I'll also mention that this was all way before, I think, like proper type safety was introduced. All of these hiccups that have happened over time were really difficult to refactor the whole project. There have been many like major version changes with it, but ultimately it has totally been worth it. Like, customers still love our application. As many users as we have, we're building all of this with just 2 developers, and like this is a really strong statement, I believe, as of course, you need strong developers in order to achieve something like this, but building a huge application with tens of thousands of users, it's also a lot to handle on a really small team. And of course, the team matters. I mentioned, or the first slide also mentioned, that I'm a product engineer. We hire really specifically for also people who are like 100% product minded. So none of our developers, even backend engineers, they don't just do tickets. So every developer that we do, even if it's on boring, not boring, that's the wrong word, on the less product side of our product, let's say operations, platform, then they also need to be like 100% customer focused and knowing how the product actually improves the user's life or the customer's life. So in that way, the team matters. We have a really small team and we're not kind of trying to push it. We don't have 2 developers because we can't find new people, but we also like the small overheads. We don't have any teams. Basically, all of our developers are simply under our CTO, and that's it. The CTO doesn't really lead all of our developers, which in total is like maybe 18, 16, maybe something like this. But it also means that all of those developers are really self-sufficient. We take responsibility. We have like every possibility to do almost everything within our application. We can choose our own projects. We can kind of go and push for anything that we want to, but we have also like been trusted to do so. So the team that actually builds it also matters, and it's not that only because of Flutter you can build something like this with only 2 people. Automate as much as possible, especially mostly because of this documentation aspect that I mentioned in the last slide. I think it's been like super important to see and know exactly how everything is documented. And I think as a comment to this, we haven't had an architecture meeting, let's say, for about a year. And it's not because we haven't found the time, but we simply haven't had the need for. So most of the things that we have built out during our first few years, we have already agreed upon. We have built those repositories, the fetchers, all of our kind of processes or daily work is kind of clear anyway, which means that we don't really need to, unless we want to start moving things about or changing things. And I guess this one is exactly towards using all of the cool frameworks, using all of the cool like patterns and stuff. I know that like Flutter is something new. People want to try new cool things. People come out with all of the, like different new solutions and patterns all the time. What's like the best and what's most performant. But for us, the choice wasn't made based on that, but exactly based on the simplicity, by going just MVVM and that's it, because everyone can understand it. Most of the developers that started with our project weren't mobile developers at all. When I joined, I was the first mobile engineer in the company. The people that started working on the application were mostly, had mostly only done React before, and they had never done any mobile applications, which kind of shows also how great Flutter can be, because like it's easy to understand, easy to read, easy to write. And then just do it. I guess we don't have too many discussions around how we should implement something. If something is easy to do, easy to read, easy to implement, then we kind of just do it. We don't usually go too heavy into discussions of if this view is if this view outputs like 57 FPS or 59, it doesn't really matter. If it's simpler and better for the development, better for speed, then this is kind of what we're often optimizing for. That's it. Thank you.
So it's the time for questions, and we don't have the potion as a prize this time, but we have a beautiful t-shirt, or plushie if you prefer. I honestly prefer the plushie. So, Skander, first slide.
Yeah, Sikander, I have 2 questions. One, in your whole presentation, you didn't mention any kind of test integration unit. So, you guys doing tests or like
No.
abandoning it? Okay.
I'll explain, I'll elaborate a bit. We did have tests. We do still have some unit tests that we don't run anymore because it was quicker not to do them. Plus, unit tests were also kind of, we always try to like figure out which parts to put under tests, which not, because not everything makes sense to put under unit tests. And most of the UI code or behavior code or like UX flows, they made more sense to be done in UI tests, but those weren't that reliable in Flutter or anywhere, to be honest, because often they are also dependent on some data changes. A lot of backend logic is in there. Like, let's say if we want to test our onboarding process, it's very, very backend heavy on like how onboarding works to a financial application. Then of course you can mock all of these things and start going through on them, but it's the effort for the gain you get wasn't worth it for us, at least until now. One day, of course, like we can't evade it forever, but at this moment we kind of opted not to, and we kind of heavily do testing on our own as developers. Plus, of course, the whole company is using the internal app at all times. We do I think we do weekly releases, if not even more often, which kind of also means that we try to release with small increments of changes, which kind of allows us to quickly fix something if something goes off.
Yeah, but I mean, if you guys don't have automated tested, you might break something, you know, like as little as a color of like a palette or a switch or something, and you might guys not notice or something.
Well, we do.
Ah, second question. You guys using RHDAR. Love that package. I use it as well. There were like 6 streams, and you mentioned this was like the minimum of thing. Then it can grow bigger.
Yeah.
And then your UI is building. So let's say I'm just only wants to build on the portfolio, just my 52,000 pound or something number, and my UI, everything under that is gonna be rebuilt only if one thing changes. Because the whole build is listening to it,
But this also, like this might not also be like architectural problem, but also how small of widgets you build. If you build the whole screen under one widget, of course, like it's gonna get heavy. It's gonna get heavy under any pattern you choose. But for us, I guess like most of the widgets are really, really small. This portfolio view, I think, I don't know, but I'm guessing this view maybe might have around, like of our own widgets then, not Flutter ones. I'm guessing it would have maybe 60, 70 probably. So it's very heavy. Most of the widgets are really small, which kind of also means that the streams are very specific to the widget that it's listening to. So there isn't one controller per screen, but there is a controller for every widget mostly.
Then that makes sense, because if one stream, all the streams at one, that doesn't.
Yeah,
make sense.
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
My name is Hassan, and I'm very early adopters of your app. I'm using it, and yeah. Besides that, you mentioned like we are very small in the developers team, and 2 questions related to that. What's your opinion about no-code and low-code solutions? If you consider the fast development, I know you've developed your app so fast, like even the MVP came so fast, and what's your opinion about it? Like, have you used any no-code, low-code solutions, or what's your opinion about it?
We haven't, but I think the opinion is like my personal, not Lightyear's, let's say. I would say no to anything that's like production-y, let's say. If you want to build an MVP, of course, like why not? I guess the target audience for most of these solutions are people who aren't developers or aren't like really like fully building fintech applications that are fully regulated, and you can't really like do these kind of solutions. But yes, for like something like our use case, I think we would never use any of those. For MVPs, mockups, of course. I'm like, let's say if we take even Figma, for example, you could also say that it's like a no-code solution, right? You just write you do the design, you write a mockup from it. It's a no-code app, kind of, right? So depends on the use case, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Please. Hi, I'm Raman, and I assume you use stateless widgets, given that you have a lot of streams, these Flutter hooks. I'm curious if you had situations where you forced to use stateful widgets.
Not really. You're right there, most of our widgets are stateless. The only stateful widgets left that we have, maybe yes, depends. There are some widgets that it doesn't make sense to use streams. If the data or if the state change is only on UI level, and let's say if you have a page view or something that only needs to track indexes or some changes to it, it doesn't need a controller because it's not business logic oriented. So if a data change like this needs to be like triggered to, or it has to be stateful, then of course we will use stateful widgets. Because it's the Flutter way. Like we still try to be as close to the platform as possible, because that's something that every Flutter developer that comes to the company will kind of be familiar with. But anything in regards to business logic, we try to stay away. Yeah.
Cool. Do you launch A/B test experiments?
Right now, no, but hopefully very soon, yes.
Okay, then another question. As a product engineer, you have kind of mindset as a product decision maker, customer aware, and engineering decisions. And can you name, for example, 3 sacrifices over engineering mindset that you have to do because of speed of development, product decision, etc.? So breaks your rules.
I'm not sure if I can exactly name 3 per se, but there are definitely, let's say there are on a weekly basis, I guess there are moments where I know that I don't write perfect code, because it makes sense to go and release it quicker. There are many places where I know that I'm writing paths that, like, how to say, it's just the code isn't clean, because I know that it will never reach here. It just makes sense to support this use case that I'm developing for right now, and not to make it like crash gracefully or have perfect error messages in cases that I know that should never happen, or that I know that I will write in the next 2 months because those features are to come, or links like this. So in that sense, I guess I am making like the engineer in me is kind of being shushed down so that I could release this feature quicker for the PM.
So it's like you decided to make experiment by yourself before starting A/B test. So you're experimenting and you're not sure that it will be kind of in production for a long time, right? You just sacrifice it and decide, okay, let's push it.
In that sense, yeah, it's so and so. We can't really always also push new features and changes without having like full compliance go ahead. Since we are like fully regulated, we can't offer features that aren't supported by our regulators, depending if it's EU or UK. And but of course, like small changes, small things that aren't like fully fledged features, we do that. And we even have, like, as product engineers, we even do full projects on our own, full product features on our own without having any PM in mind. So right now, for example, we only have 1 PM in the company. So 1 PM can't get to the whole app at the same time for like expanding into new markets, new features, new whatnot. So as an engineer, you kind of have to take that role as well. So, yeah.
Thanks.
I have a question regarding the concurrency in the app, because you're using a lot of like streams and all that stuff. So in my experience, they're like, sometimes it happens that they're dangling streams, or streams are referencing to something that's already been destroyed. So like, how are you kind of handling concurrency in your app? Or is there a need to?
It hasn't really been a problem for us, because I'm not sure right now if it's first of all, the hooks that we are using for the controllers. Our controller is also has a base class that all of our own controllers implement, and in there we also try to like properly dispose, and we have all of the generic stream management in there, so that nothing would be kind of left dangling, and it would work out of the box. So that's why I also mentioned that every controller always emits a stream, because it's something that's always expected from a controller, and that is also then handled properly. We haven't really had any issue with that, indeed.
Okay, so like mostly Flutter is handling it well?
Kind of, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, also a question regarding that as well, like if something happens, obviously something's gonna break at some point, right? So how are you like handling the crash analytics or analytics for those kind of stuff? Or are you using any kind of?
Yeah, we do use Sentry. I hate Sentry, but I'm not sure why it got so popular. I think the UX is like not horrible, but almost horrible. Like it's often very difficult to find issues or group them properly or do any like proper, let's say, querying of those issues. I really like New Relic for native, and I think they have Flutter capability now as well. We haven't used it yet, But for there, for example, you could probably write like SQL-like queries to create your own dashboards, to create your own like references, thresholds, whatnot. So yeah, right now we do use Sentry, but I'm guessing it's not the best.
Right. Thanks. Please.
So you mentioned that you come from Android and then iOS. Did you ever have a situation where you wanted to switch back?
No. There's a funny story about that is that when I was in Pipedrive, then I hated cross-platform development, all of it. I think it was stupid and it shouldn't exist because native all the way, and like it's how it's supposed to be, and it's closest to the platform and all of that yada yada. And I did start using Flutter. I started my own startup. I took React Native because it was the most popular one back then. I couldn't get the demo project properly building, so I thought, fuck it, I'll just go for Flutter. I'll try that out. It worked out of the box really well. I did native apps before for, let's say, about a week. I did both Android and iOS. I got kind of tired of doing both for my own startup, so I tried to use this Flutter app, and I think it took me like 1 day to do the same thing that I did in native for a week. So it kind of made sense to continue with Flutter and just go with there because it made complete sense, and the amount of differences on platform, like if iOS or if Android was not, the amount of these kind of switches were very, very low. It turns out that you don't need a lot of like platform specific stuff for just building a simple UI. Like none of it is using any native components. So now, no, I would never go back. Yeah, I think it's great for what it is, but for something like Flutter, I'm guessing React Native actually as well, you can still build native components and native like use cases that you just integrate in your app as a dependency, as a library, and it works just as well. We have some of those implementations in our app as well. For example, if you some lifecycle handling, for example, if you try to close if you start going into the background, it kind of phases out the whole app. It's something that you do on OS level because it gets the proper events that Flutter might not. So I still do some native, but I would never go back fully native because I just don't see the point anymore.
Very good questions, very good answers as well. But we have to choose one question.
I forgot about that. I think the concurrency one.
Concurrency one, all right. And shirt or flashy?
I'll go with the shirt.
I actually have here, so I can keep it for next time. But yeah, we're gonna give you the shirt later. You can choose the size. And yeah, thanks again, Alar. So we have the pizza ready, but we also have another guest who's gonna talk very quickly about the best CI/CD pipeline for Flutter. That is Skandar.
Sorry?
What is the best CI/CD for Flutter?
Our sponsors.
Nice.
Please.
Hey everybody, anyhow. Yeah, as you're the guest now from CodeMagic. And CodeMagic, I'm sure if you're dealing with Flutter, you're familiar with CodeMagic anyways. But to briefly introduce what it is a cloud-based continuous integration and continuous delivery solution. Specifically designed for mobile developers building Flutter, React Native. It's not just Flutter, it's also React Native, native iOS, native Android. If you're building Unity, we support it as well. And white labeling. If you're familiar with the white labeling solution, it's like one base code and you just redesign it for different customers, for different clients by changing its bundle identifier, iOS bundle ID, package name, and all this stuff. We support it as well. Yeah, there you go. I saw you guys were also talking about test automation and all this stuff. We have all these in our platform.
If you haven't used it, we give 500 free build minutes for personal accounts. You can sign up and try adding your application, and then try play around with the product. And we probably, as a developer or DevOps, you don't want to deal with all these code signing stuff manually. iOS applications to App Store, or APKs, AABs to Play Store. We have them in our product, native feature, as a native feature, and they're all done automatically by CodeMagic. And we've got many more, like probably you're quite familiar with iOS development. When testing it, you have to deal with device management, you have to register, you have to find out the device UDIDs, then you have to go to your developer portal, then register everything manually. So all these processes, like everything that you can think of as a manual process, is automated by CodeMagic. As a Flutter product, we support. We have our documentation. We have sample YAML and workflow editor documentations, and projects that shows how to code sign, how to build for iOS and Android within the same workflow or in separate workflows, automatically trigger builds, etc., etc. So it's just, it keeps going on and on. But yeah.
But maybe somebody has some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead. And just to motivate you, the best question will also get a t-shirt. What a t-shirt. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, about the security point of view, CodeMagic does also offer machines that we could do where we could run our integration tests, right?
What do you mean by machines? Like what machines?
If you go to products, I can navigate you probably there. Yeah. And go to Flutter, perhaps.
I think you're
yeah, it's where you can run your integration tests on your Mac OS M1 machines that you're offering.
Yes, that's right. And by the way, just a side note, probably we deprecated M1s. We replaced them with more powerful M2 machines and more like M2 Pro, M2 Max, and M2 Ultra machines.
Yeah, as soon as I'm finished with my session and I've done the test, now the next user is in line. Going to use that machine, how you wipe up all the credentials and stuff?
Every single session happens in a virtual environment. So as soon as you start a new build, that virtual environment is created only for you, for your builds. And as soon as your build is done, like it completes or fails, anything, it just stops, then that virtual environment is completely destroyed. So we keep nothing left from like anything from your side, so that is completely empty for another use.
Okay.
This is what we call the virtual environment. So everything happens in this virtual environment.
Yeah, to me it sounds like you're using the OS as the Mac OS, but the machine is like something else, like a Hackintosh or something.
No, actually, these are virtual. These are, by the way, not like your local machine. Like this kind of machine is a virtual machine that we store in our data centers, and you just use them each time only for the period of your builds. As soon as it's done, you're done. We keep nothing on disk, so yeah, it's completely empty from your side.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
You mentioned that it's cloud-based. Any plans for self-hosted runners, or they are there?
By self-hosted, you mean on-premise or
machine? No, it could be on-premise, it could be AWS cloud machines, but anyway, it's self-hosted runners. Not your virtual machines, but my. We do support it actually. If you want to use AWS, for example, machines in connection with CodeMagic, we do support it. So we just pricing.
Yes.
Cool.
because in that way, you know, we need to actually, our team should get together and we should configure everything, like from your machine, AWS and all this stuff.
It's higher price.
Yeah, it is actually going to be a little higher than the usual pricing, yes, because at this point you're not using the machines that we provide the way, and you want us to configure everything for your needs, like manually. But eventually we will, work with those machines on the AWS side.
Okay, I thought there was just documentation instruction how I can build my self-hosted runners instead of you don't use your resources much for that. Do not use cloud time.
You wouldn't want to do it, because if you want to do it, you have to. You have to deal with everything yourself manually. So you have to maintain softwares installed on those machines. For example, Xcode, they just released this Xcode 16, right? And you have to go ahead and install it on your machine manually. And tomorrow there will be 17, you have to deal with it. Tomorrow, for example, npm installer, they release this new version. All this stuff must be done by yourself, and you wouldn't want to do it. That is the main idea, actually. We automate it. So if you do it manually, then you can just do it from your local machine. That's the point from your side, that you don't want to waste your time on those stuff, because otherwise you have to, let's say Xcode itself is the huge mess, you have to deal with, maintain it, just go through all the manual stuff. Yeah, that's because, you choose CodeMagic.
Thanks.
No problem. Yeah.
I don't know Flutter and I don't know CodeMagic either, but often when testing anything, including the UI tests, tend to be pretty flaky. Did you or your customers face that problem, and is there anything in your product you do about that?
If you want to avoid flaky tests, first you have to start with maintaining your local tests. So we do not really so what we do is you provide your tests to CodeMagic and we start running those codes. If you have some, let's say, broken things within your code, then we can't really do anything besides telling you that you should fix it. This is eventually comes from your side. So what we do is we just run those tests, execute those commands, and we build your code. If you want to, for example, get all test results together and share them with your QA team or externally, internally, we do all this stuff. But when it comes to your internal testing, then it is something your responsibility to maintain. And you can integrate CodeMagic into third parties as well. For example, if you want to test them on real devices or simulators, you can easily integrate them into your pipeline. So you don't have to just go to that environment, deal with it manually, come back to CodeMagic. You can run those, integrate them into third parties, get the results back to CodeMagic environment, so everything is staying in one place rather than just, again, manually maintaining them.
I have a question about Flutter. Is the pipeline, or not the pipeline, but is the configuration itself different for both platforms? You need to configure it differently. And does it also run differently with different compute times and whatnot?
You mean building Flutter applications?
Yeah, because it's native, right? So it's Android and iOS. So you have to.
Let me put it this way. When building Flutter on your local machine, you run Flutter, for example, build IPA relays and some export options if you have. This is the exact same command that you should run on the CodeMagic side. If you're building React Native or native iOS, you have to run Gradle assembled relays, for example.
Okay.
This is the same command. So whatever you run on your local machine to build those binaries, you have to run the same ones on the CodeMagic side. So we do not invent commands. We have CLI tools, and with those CLI tools, you can easily, for example, create bundle identifiers in your Apple developer account, so you don't have to create them manually, come back and add them. we create provisioning profiles, and we actually check using our CLI tools that if that specific provisioning profile associated with the bundle identifier is present. If it's present, we use it. If it's not present, then we go ahead and create it using our CLI tools. Then the same goes to building IPA. We use, for example, locally, you use xcode build command. This is, we have our CLI tool that you need to run that IPA binary. And again, we use our CLI tools. Again, eventually, what you do locally, you can technically do the same on the CodeMagic side. We just make it easier for you and automate the full process so that you can just focus on developing your application rather than dealing with Xcode, publishing to App Store, etc.
So practically it can be just one workflow where you having different steps and just upload stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Nice.
So within one workflow, yeah, you have all the configurations, you just click, or you can use CodeMagic REST API to start builds, and then yeah, everything is just done within one workflow.
Everything is done magically.
Everything, yeah, absolutely.
So, who is the best one?
All of them are actually good. I know you're already familiar, but this time I'd like to go for the AWS question. It was just not many people actually know it. It's just it just standed out to me. Therefore, yeah.
All right.
Now you know that you can work with AWS machines and whatnot.
So win-win situation,
Yeah.
and also an applause for the winner. And yeah, just thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed this event. Feel free to share your feedback, and I see you at the pizzas. Thank you.